I'm 29 years old. Married for 5 years, I have a husband who's 3 years my senior. We don't have children yet, but lately, I've been thinking that maybe it's about time. Last year, we fulfilled a dream of ours and bought a newly built house. Before that, we lived in an apartment together. When we decided to get married, I moved into the apartment where my husband was living. It was because he said, "You should just live here. It's really nice being close to the company." I did want to search for a new place with my husband, but he didn't seem interested in moving, so I gave up. But honestly, I never liked that apartment. Sure, the location was great, and it was new and clean, but the neighbor was troublesome. She's a young new mother, and every time she sees me, she throws sarcastic remarks my way. To my husband, she's all smiles and charm. But with me, it's just, "Oh, hello. Wow, you're really a big girl, aren't you? Too big to be cute. I feel sorry for your husband." She'd say things like this in passing, in a voice just low enough that others couldn't hear. I'm tall, what you might call a model figure. I get called stylish, beautiful, but never cute. I even dabbled in modeling once, but I lacked the talent and quit. Instead, or rather, I now design clothes for a living. My in-laws adore me, and my sister-in-law is very fond of me. I've asked my husband several times if he's really okay with someone like me, and he's always said, "Of course I am. I love you for who you are. Height, looks, it doesn't matter." Blessed with a caring husband, in-laws, and sister-in-law, I was living a reasonably happy life, but the daily snide remarks were becoming a stress factor, and I consulted with my husband. But he'd just say, "Really? I can't imagine her saying such things. Are you sure it's not just in your head?" It's not in my head. It's every day, every single day. She must be jealous because you're beautiful. Best to ignore it. He didn't take it seriously. To avoid meeting the neighbor, I started being careful about timing my outings to avoid running into her. It worked to some extent, our paths didn't cross anymore, but then she started making noise. Always when I was alone. Once, during work, the noise was so loud that I decided to visit her apartment. "Excuse me, the noise is quite loud, could you please keep it down a bit?" "What? Are you harassing me? I'm not being loud. If you're going to talk nonsense, I'll report you to the management company." The conversation was futile. I tried to do as much work as possible in the room farthest from the noise and managed to get by until one day. My sister-in-law came over to the house to hang out. We were watching a movie when the noise started. "What's with this noise?" "Oh, it's the person next door." "Is it always this loud? It's clearly directed at us. She's even banging on the walls." "Yeah." I tried talking to her, but it didn't lead anywhere. "What? You can't let it slide. I'm going to give her a piece of my mind." Enraged, my sister-in-law headed to the neighbor's place. "Hey, it's really noisy. Who's there?" "I'm the sister of the woman next door. Do you make this noise every day? What kind of harassment is this?" My sister-in-law, full of vigor, seemed to overwhelm the neighbor, but then the neighbor said something shocking. "I'm the one being harassed. This woman, she's always making noise, causing me trouble. I was just giving back what I got. I don't know about since you came, but before that, it was noisy." "Huh, is that so? My sister here works during the day, she can't make noise. She has meetings and all, making noise would cause problems, right?" Work? Yes. My sister is a freelance designer. So, she often works from home. As my sister-in-law explained, the neighbor seemed surprised and, muttering to herself, closed the door on us. "Huh? No apology? What's with her?" I calmed down my infuriated sister-in-law as we returned to our apartment. There was no more noise that day. I thought that perhaps we could finally live in peace, but the neighbor's harassment continued. Each incident was minor, but they added up and became quite distressing. I couldn't take it anymore and brought up moving out to my husband. Move out, huh? But this apartment is so convenient for work. That may be, but we'll look for a new place. And it'll cost money, you know. I'll pay for it. Really? But what about the security deposit and all that? Isn't it a waste? Then let's just buy a new house. I'll put down the down payment. A house. Yeah, that might be an option. Although my husband was initially reluctant to move, he agreed when buying a house was suggested. We carefully researched locations since moving would be difficult after building a house. Eventually, we found a good piece of land near my in-laws' home and decided to build there. A year later, we successfully moved. I thought we could finally lead a peaceful life, but soon after the move, my husband started acting strange. First, he began coming home late. At first, I thought it was understandable since his workplace was now further away, but then he started coming home past midnight. He even came home smelling of shampoo. When I confronted him, he said, "The company installed showers, and I'm using them." I suspected infidelity, but the usual signs, like not contributing to household expenses, weren't there. So, I didn't pursue it further. One day, while shopping, I ran into a former neighbor from the apartment. She loved gossip, and whenever we met, she'd talk my ear off. I used to avoid her to not get caught up, but I let my guard down after not seeing her for so long. However, the stories she told today were of great interest to me. While still curious about the gossip, I went to put away the groceries and noticed something was off. The refrigerator was dark and smelled faintly bad. And the freezer was soaked through. It seemed the refrigerator had broken. I thought maybe I should have replaced it when we moved, and immediately contacted my husband. He used to return calls even during work, but today he didn't respond for a while. And without any contact from him, night fell. He came home late that night. "I'm home. Welcome back. Hey, I tried contacting you today." "Oh? Sorry. I didn't notice. Something happened?" "No, nothing. What about you? You sound suspicious." "Well, it seems like the refrigerator is broken." "Is that all? You can do whatever you like about it. Fix it or buy a new one." When my husband came home, he seemed flustered when I mentioned not being able to reach him. After mentioning the refrigerator, my husband said to do as I pleased and then went off to the bedroom. Well, if that's what he says, I'll do what I like, I thought, and the very next day, I went to the electronics store to pick out a new refrigerator. Luckily, they had the one I liked in stock, so I decided to buy it. However, the delivery of the new one and the pickup of the old one were by different companies, so there was going to be a day's gap. Unfortunately, I had an important work meeting I couldn't miss on the pickup day, so I had to talk to my husband about it. "Hey, I've chosen a fridge, but the pickup is the day after delivery. I have a work meeting on the pickup day, can you be at home for me?" "Sure, that's fine. I'm off that day." With my husband taking responsibility, the dates were set, and all that was left was to wait for the delivery. On delivery day, I was out, but I rushed home as the long-awaited time approached. The fridge was installed, and then we had to decide what to do with the old one. I pointed to the space above the floor storage. Our house had a floor storage and inspection hatch that we didn't normally use. Plus, the old fridge would be picked up the next day anyway, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to block it for a bit. With that sorted, I excitedly went shopping and bought lots of food. As I was putting everything away in the new fridge, I thought I heard a voice. But I was alone in the house. I decided it was my imagination and left the living room. That night, my husband didn't come home late. I had gotten used to his late returns, so a little delay didn't bother me. But tomorrow was the pickup day. I hoped he would come back on time as I took a bath, worrying about tomorrow. Then, as I was about to have a drink in the kitchen, I heard noises. They seemed to be coming from under the old fridge, from the floor storage. "Is someone there?" I called out, and the noise turned into loud thumping. Scared, I hesitated but eventually called my in-laws' house. My in-laws and sister-in-law came over quickly, and I explained, sorry for the late hour. It sounds like someone is under the floor. We all approached the source of the noise, and when my father-in-law called out, hey, is someone there, the banging on the floor continued. Seems like someone's there. We moved the fridge, armed ourselves with anything that could be used as a weapon, and opened the door. There, to our surprise, were my husband and the neighbor from the apartment we used to live in. What are you doing here? I asked them. You're the one who lied. You said today was the pickup day, so I just stayed home. That's right. You said you wouldn't be home, so we were just having tea. We've been deceived. Locked in here, we'll sue. What? Today's the delivery day. And why would people just having tea be under the floor storage? I asked, and they both fell silent, at a loss for words. Then I told them, it's okay. Everyone knows about you too. What do you mean, knows? What are you talking about? I heard from the people at the old apartment. You've been seeing her all along, right? Hanging out in the next room. That's why you didn't want to move. But you agreed to move for a house, didn't you? Even after we moved, you kept visiting her, and that's why you were coming home late, isn't it? I never imagined you'd bring her to our home, though. What are you talking about? I don't know who told you, but that's not true. It's rude to accuse us when she just came over to help because you weren't home. What's the fun in deceiving us? My husband refused to admit it and wanted to put the blame on me for deceiving them. Then my sister-in-law, looking exasperated, said, look, brother. She isn't lying. You just misunderstood the day she wanted you to be home. After all, I was with her that day, along with Dad and Mom. Only then did my husband seem to realize that my in-laws were also there, and he turned pale as he looked behind me. There stood my in-laws, giving cold stares to my husband and the neighbor. It's not like that. Dad, Mom. Sally, explain it to them. Despite my husband's attempts to explain, I interrupted, I'll be consulting a lawyer for future proceedings, so I'll contact you later with the details. And I ushered the dejected two out of the house. After that, my husband and I divorced. He was resistant, but the in-laws scolded him, and he agreed to the divorce. We settled without division of property, the house remained in my name, and he agreed to pay alimony. The day the fridge broke, I had learned not only that my husband had been visiting the former neighbor's house, but also that they had been involved before we moved. At first, I couldn't believe it, but the neighbor's story was very specific, and it didn't seem like just gossip. Indeed, when I consider it, the attitude of the neighbor from when we lived in the apartment makes sense. Even if I can understand it, I can't comprehend it. As I was troubled, the resident showed me a photo of my husband going in and out of the building. Use this as evidence if you ever need to, she said. And that day, my inability to reach my husband deepened my suspicions. The day I was buying the fridge, by chance, my sister-in-law contacted me, and when I mentioned going to the electronics store, she said, I want to go too. Can I come with you? Feeling uncertain about choosing on my own, I gladly accepted her company, and to my surprise, the entire family from my husband's side came along. We bought the fridge, and while eating lunch together, my sister-in-law noticed something was off with me and asked with concern, hey, is everything all right with you, Sally? It's nothing, I'm fine, I replied, but all three looked at me worriedly. Did something happen with brother? If so, you can tell us anything. We're on your side. Hearing this from the in-laws who nodded along, I felt simultaneously happy and overwhelmed with sadness, and tears naturally started to flow. I shared what I had heard from the resident and showed them the photos. My mother-in-law hugged me and rubbed my back, while my sister-in-law and father-in-law were outraged on my behalf. That jerk, what is he thinking? Unbelievable. He needs to learn his lesson. They calmed down as we agreed to discuss what to do next, and that's when we started to investigate my husband's surroundings, which led to the incident. After the divorce, I learned much more about the two of them. On the day of the fridge delivery, my husband and the neighbor were having an affair at our home. My husband and the neighbor had a very close relationship even before he and I got married, and the harassment I received from her was indeed driven by jealousy. My husband was aware of this but thought, 2 women fighting over me. I must be some guy. And never took my concerns seriously. Even after we moved, he couldn't end his affair with the neighbor and used the increased commute as an excuse to continue visiting the apartment. The neighbor, for her part, seemed to dream of marrying my husband, thinking if they got married, she would have the new house. She had been saying, "Let me see your house. I want to go to the new place," for a while. My husband mixed up the pickup and delivery days and invited the neighbor over on the delivery day, thinking I would not be home. When I returned during the delivery window, they panicked, hid their shoes and bags, and hid themselves in the floor storage. It wasn't very spacious, but there was enough room for my husband and the petite neighbor to hide. Unknowingly, I had directed the workers to place the old fridge to be picked up on the hatch they were hiding under, trapping them inside. In their panic, without food, drink, or much space to move, and the neighbor's phone battery dead, they eventually made noise to get help. And although they were found safely, the repercussions were severe. The neighbor had fought for custody during her divorce primarily for child support and wasn't actively involved in childcare, spending her time instead on leisure. She started dating my husband after learning he worked for a major company, timing her exits to coincidentally greet him and make herself known. My husband fell for it and started a relationship with her. He had resolved to end it when he decided to marry me, but she convinced him that a capable and attractive woman like me would eventually betray or look down on him, and so he continued the affair half-heartedly. On that day, she had left her child at home to come to our house. The child was in the 2nd grade and, according to her, can eat and sleep on his own, he'll be fine. Hearing this, I thought, how can that be okay? A child that young alone as it gets dark must have been incredibly anxious. Her routine was discovered by her ex-husband, and he got custody. He came to apologize once, a sincere and kind man, with a smiling child, and I was glad for them. I was deeply disappointed in my ex-husband who had no qualms about leaving his child for leisure, relieved that I didn't have a child with such a man. The neighbor ended up owing alimony to me and child support to her ex-husband, struggling with the payments. My husband, who had been lying about working outside to have his affair during work hours, got found out by his company, which became widely rumored, and he resigned due to the uncomfortable environment. Shortly after our divorce, he married the neighbor, but with his resignation, his income plummeted. With the addition of alimony and child support payments, their finances became dire, and they lived in a state of constant bickering. Once, my husband reached out to his family for help, but they refused and cut ties with both him and the neighbor. I still keep in touch with my in-laws, who continue to care for me as a daughter and sister. Although my relationship with my husband is over, I am still grateful to him for bringing me together with his family. Now, I live comfortably in a spacious house, doing the work I love.